Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here. Today we're going to talk about Diablo 4 and the stuff that's coming up in Season 2, my plans, and generally my take on the state of the game now that we have seen both of the developer live streams. They were pretty chunky, as promised, and they were pretty interesting. So let's see what's coming up in D4, why don't we? Now, if you guys want to watch the official live stream and all that, it's on the Diablo channel. I'm not going to go like a full run through. This is a summary with my opinion on things and some of the notable highlights. So, to get started, there is a theme in this season. This is Season of Blood, Season 2. Basically, there's going to be like a zone takeover with monsters. They're like vampires or something. You get some of their powers and blood and have like an extra layer to customize your character. Basically, it's like a Helltide 2.0 with some exclusive character-based rewards. That's basically what it is. And is that good? Yeah, I think that's really good. I actually think Helltide is the single best mechanic in Diablo 4. So, yeah, I mean, I can't really imagine this is going to not be good. I think it is going to be pretty good. It is also noted that they did not, as far as I know, explicitly mention that the customizing features of Season 2 will be removed from the game at the end of Season 2. This is something that they did say when they were launching Season 1, and I was like, WTF, bro, there's like not really enough content in the game. That's kind of the problem with Diablo 4, so why would you like add content and then immediately remove it with Season 1? Well, they kind of stuck to that plan. Season 1 is gone. Those like auto spell casting gems and the barber and all that crazy stuff, that's gonzo. The boss that had like the gems and stuff, I forget his name, he is part of the future of Diablo 4, so the actual boss, the character is still in, but the gems and their mechanics are gone. But hopefully, moving forward, we'll keep some remnant of what Season 2 is bringing us, kind of like what we see in the Path of Exile cycle. I think Diablo 4 has certainly taken some inspiration from that successful cycle. Let's be fair. We also have patch notes, the very lengthy patch notes. It is pretty difficult to read if you are not super well accustomed to what's happening in D4. Don't worry, I will spare you, but if you must check it out, links below. So primarily, it's just like an enormous amount of quality of life changes. While I would say that basically all of these changes are pretty good, I can't say that I'm like super blown away by any of them. And the reason is that this is kind of just pretty typical quality of life. Pretty much what we already see in a lot of other ARPGs right now. A lot of these mechanics we actually see in like Diablo 3. So it's like, yes, thank you, but it's not like, oh my god, can you, yeah, I'll spare you that. It's not anything like super crazy, but it's nice stuff. They basically the gems are no longer going to fill your inventory. There's a few other mechanics with that. The mount stuff is a lot better. They really had a focus on like risk versus reward. Things are generally more rewarding. All that stuff in order to farm your extra Paragon points and skill points by doing the renown stuff. Well, that's completely gone. If you've done all the renown stuff in the past, you basically just get all the renown stuff now, which is great because I hate doing that, and I'm not the only one. Experience gain is also much faster, which is a pretty big one. And I think this is kind of like a humbling admission that the leveling process was too big of a part in the game. Ultimately, it was the game when the game launched, and it didn't really change meaningfully for Season 1. So this is like, yeah, we get it. We don't want you guys to take forever to level a character. But they've actually given us a few things to do once the character is, polished, high level, max level, all that kind of stuff. So this is overall a really good change, and it is like, it's kind of like a humbling change I feel that they would make. So I'm glad that they're going there. I'm glad that they're actually taking this path because I honestly didn't expect it. You can portal inside Nightmare Dungeons now. Nightmare Dungeons had their own rework. A lot of the affixes that were complete BS are not too bad now. Basically, they want you to actually enjoy doing Nightmare Dungeons. And I think the changes that they've made, while rather simple, I think they should be pretty effective. Items and item levels are buffed, so item levels goes to 925 right now, and I've seen a few images, but I don't know if they were too official, but it's like 3,000 health on like some like max eye level items. There's also much less like useless items that you're going to get, especially in world tiers 3 and 4, so that's going to be pretty cool. Also, the minimum item level is going to go up with the levels of monsters as your opponents, so if you do higher and higher Nightmare Dungeons, you're going to get to a point where just about all the level you find is extremely high item level. Not just the old high item level, the new high item level. And I have to use my imagination here a little bit because I haven't played it, but I think that this system should work pretty well in constantly giving your character upgrades as you level up and reach a finalized finished character. So I think overall this will feel a lot smoother. But again, that's a guess. How can I say? There's new bosses, like new actual endgame bosses. They've retuned a lot of stuff. So it's not like, yeah, it's like the Uber Lilith equivalent. Well, they retuned Uber Lilith. They literally said on the live stream they don't like that Uber Lilith was basically only beaten by bugged builds and like unintended combos. And that's basically what I was telling you guys. It's like, this is just a dumb fight. Like, if I want to have a reasonable shot at learning and doing the fight, I'm basically just going to have to make a new character that's the most bugged build in the game, right? Like, that was the approach. That was a horrible approach. I'm actually quite glad that they recognized that, and we get other bosses. We don't really know what kind of difficulty to expect. That is, honestly, that's a really big question mark, because there's going to be more changes, as I'll talk about here in a second. We have no idea how hard these bosses are going to be, but they have said that they will drop the Uber Uniques. They have limited drop pools. It's not like you want to farm one boss for like the potential entire pool of Uniques. No, they're actually pretty limited. If you're really target farming certain Uniques, you can try to target farm specific bosses. Now, you have to get like pieces and stuff, so you can't just like constantly kill the same boss over and over and over again, but I think it was mentioned on social media that this is something you can do with a party. So party play might actually be pretty big for doing these bosses, and it might sound like a hassle to kind of get that system going. But I have a feeling that things aren't going to be too difficult, because it's probably going to be something like, hey, you have an invitation, yeah, and then you just like get 3 other people to do that, and then you just run the cycle. So, you know, maybe something like that. We'll have to see. That might be a little bit of a pain, but hopefully not. We also don't know how difficult the bosses are going to be because we had pretty major class and character reworks. So let's just quickly talk about like the general stuff. We had a resistance rework. So resistances, they were basically useless. I don't really know how else to say that. They were basically useless. I made a whole video on that if you want the details, but it's probably a waste of time because they don't work that way anymore, thankfully. The way resistances work now in Diablo 4 is if you get like 10% resistance and then another 10, it's like additive. Yes, and the resistance cap is 70. So you just get 70 resistance from your intelligence stat and however else you get through Paragon's gear and, you know, skills and whatnot. And then you're done. How about that? Isn't that cool? Yeah, that's actually a pretty good system. And they said there's going to be rare effects that increase your resistance cap to, I believe, a maximum cap of 85. That's going to be pretty hard to achieve and only in some, you know, unique mechanics like elixir stacking and that kind of stuff. So is this a good system? Yes. How do I know that? Because that's exactly the system that exists in Path of Exile because it works. And the reason it exists in Path of Exile because it works is because it was first invented in Diablo 2. Yes, it has been a while since that game came out, but it turns out that game did a lot of things really well. And one of those things that did really well is resistances. Who knew? So again, I'm kind of glad that Blizzard kind of went with, I would say, the humbling fix to this thing, because I feel like when new games are coming out, developers are kind of pushed to do it like a new and better way. But some things are kind of just figured out, honestly. And is there a better system to resist than this? Yeah, maybe. But it sure as hell wasn't whatever they launched with in Diablo 4. That was not it whatsoever. So again, a humbling decision to bring it back to OG Diablo 2 resistances. But I can't criticize it. I have to give them credit. I think that is absolutely the way to go. Now, where does that leave Sorks and Necros because their main stat gives them resists? Well, it gets a little bit tricky there because they said that resists are definitely things that you can achieve. So does that make Sork and Necros bad because their main stats give something you can get to max otherwise? On one hand, possibly. I haven't played it yet, so yes, that might be bad. But I would like to think probably not. The reason I think that is items in Diablo 4, while some people criticize the item system, the fact that there's only 4 stats on items means that you very often need to make meaningful decisions of picking defensive stats versus offensive stats that can have major impacts on your character. So I think even though you might get like a whole bunch of free resist from int that you could otherwise get on items, the fact that you don't have to get it from your items actually unlocks other levels of character power. So I think, and I actually do believe this system will work out pretty well. I also went through a lot of the changes and noticed that they've changed it so armor is a lot more abundant. The disobedience aspect is back up to like 66% or something enormous. Armor values are going to be back up. Skulls are going to be back in your jewelry probably. Armor no longer mitigates elemental damage. That's just resists now, but physical damage is still a pretty big deal. But from what I have seen, armor is a lot more abundant now. It's easier to get the armor that you need. So I don't think we'll have major discrepancies in survivability across different classes because I think it won't be that difficult for any class to get the cap armor versus same level targets and maybe against a few levels higher. And they have said that it's not too crazy hard to cap your elemental resistances either. So, okay, that's pretty good too. Damage buckets. It used to be that any kind of damage was just additive except for crits and vulnerable damage. And effectively, you had to actually get a critical hit to multiply your damage with crit damage. But basically, those are the two big things. And they had an explanation on their stream. And if you watched it and you were left confused, you're probably where most people are. But I will try to give you guys my understanding of it. So basically, Blizzard is saying no to multipliers. Okay. I don't think you will need crit multi or vuln on any character. It might still be a good idea to get it, but you will not need it moving forward. The way that I believe it works is you still get 20 more damage if you do a hit against a vulnerable target. You still get 50% more damage if you hit a critical strike on a target, so you still get those as multipliers. But critical damage is kind of like getting damage to close enemies. It's kind of like getting fire damage if you're using a fire skill. Critical damage on your gear will not further multiply your crits. I believe that's how it works. I believe it's additive. I think vuln damage works the same way. So if you have like 100 vuln damage, it's not going to like literally double your damage. It's going to be the 20 multi that's base, and then you're going to get like just the additive value of the rest, so like 80 or 100 or whatever it is. I don't know how it'll show up in the tooltips on the character sheet. That's why I'm kind of saying that. But basically, it actually seems like they toned down the multiplicative scaling of characters, and it seems like not all characters are going to be completely reliant on crits and vuln damage. So while this might homogenize, the crazy stuff that happens with damage in the game, I actually think that it will enable a lot of builds that didn't previously exist because of their difficulty in applying these effects to actually exist moving forward. So I think overall it's a good change, but there's so many changes happening at the same time, it's difficult for me to say with confidence that this is the best way ever to do it. It seems all right. And yes, there are significant class changes, not just in how these mechanics relate to the classes themselves, but there are just significant class changes. On the stream, if you watched it, it's like there's like 2 things they said for like Necro and like 3 things for Rogue, and I'm sitting there, it's like, wait, that's all they changed? But no, actually, if you read the patch notes, not just in the class section, but also in the bug fixes, very lengthy bug fixes, okay? The whole story is that it's actually pretty meaningful changes, okay? We're expecting pretty meaningful changes in some Paragon things. Now, some of these might be nerfed. Some of them might be buffed. Again, it's sometimes going to be a bit difficult to see. Like if you're playing Firewall Sork, the Burning Instinct, it's not going to give you such a crazy multiplier anymore. But it gives you an actual multiplier instead of a lot of additive damage now. Is that better? I don't know. Is that worse? I don't know. Maybe. It might actually be worse. I don't know. There are a few things that are definitely buffs. Notably minions. I know some of you guys that continue to subscribe to this channel, and thank you for doing that, perhaps followed my Necromancer adventures. I basically tried to make pure minion necros work, and they worked. Barely, but they worked. It was a pretty tanky build. It was a pretty fast build. It was a pretty good clear speed build. Just an overall pretty good build. And the best way that I learned to play minions in Diablo 4 in the launch and in Season 1 was generally focusing on buffing the golem damage, primarily the bone golem. Why the bone golem? So the bone golem doesn't do the most damage, but unlike the other golem options, the bone golem's basic attack is a cleave. It's like a wide arc in front of the golem. And actually, it's a really wide arc in front of the golem. He hits so many targets. So in terms of multi-hitting, in terms of actually putting damage into golem and having it mean something in the game, Bone Golem Golemancers is actually a pretty damn strong strategy. So I'm not sure 100% if Blizzard was aware of this, but while it's up to debate if whatever build you might think is stronger or weaker, probably it's going to be a bit weaker because of this multiplicative scaling that they're changing. Well, the multiplicative scaling wasn't working very well on minions at all. So minions, just with that change, should be doing better versus other builds. They also just literally buffed the damage of golems and skeleton warriors. They also doubled the damage of golems. Yes, times 2, not like plus 100, times 2. And the golem node on the Paragon tree, which is already crazy, it gave you 40% more golem damage and life, now gives 100. That's right. It doesn't stop there. It does not stop there. There is an aspect that gave you like multiplicative damage to your skeletons the longer they've been alive, up to like 10 seconds, and I think it was 40%. That now affects golems as well. So the sum of that and the fact that we can more meaningfully scale minion damage effectively, and the fact that they actually buffed minions on the Paragons quite significantly, golems are going to do like 6 times more damage to, my guess is about 10 times more damage than before. Now, going into this season, I was thinking maybe I'd try the Fire Sork again, because if they fix resists, that build stands to gain most. Well, they fix resist, but they actually kind of fix resists for everybody. It's not like the Fire Sork that is more tuned towards getting resists. It's going to have more resists than other characters. Maybe a little bit more, because some of the mechanics allow Sorks to get like maximum resistances in some cases, but not significantly. And I'm not sure if Firewall's buffed or nerfed, because, again, they kind of changed how Burning Instinct works. But let me tell you, there is no way that a minion necro is going to be worse than last patch, okay? There's no way it's doing anything less than 6 times damage. Now, that might not be some crazy damage values if you're playing like bugged Bone Spear builds and whatnot, but for me as a minion player, I'm going to be pretty happy. And yeah, I'm going to play a golem-based necro once again. And if you're curious about other necro builds, they did nerf bone builds quite a bit. Remember that thing where you had infinity lucky hit with Bone Prison? They bug fixed that. So rip in peace Ring of Mendel and a whole bunch of other shenanigans that as a result of that bug that lasted up until now somehow. But there's been a lot of bugs fixed, and overall, I think while my playthrough in Season 2 won't last like a month like it did on launch, I think it'll probably last some days to a week. I think that's fair. I think I'm going to have a good time playing Diablo 4 in Season 2. I think it's going to be a faster playthrough, again, than launch, but I think they're admitting that that's how the game is going to have to be played in its current state. I think I'm going to have quite a bit of fun, so we'll see. I think it's come October 17th. Till then, Diablo fans, I'll have a few build guides for you guys once I get a few things ironed out. And once again, home of the KRIPP builds is Mobalytics. Check them out, and if you do want to see kind of the rough idea behind a Golemancers, I'll give you guys a link to those builds in the description, just so you guys, see what it's about. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.